got cars, big as bars, they got rivers of gold. But the wind goes right through you, no place for the old. When you first took my hand on a cold Christmas Eve, you promised me Broad Street was waiting for me. You were handsome, you were pretty, you're the king of South Philly. When the band finished playing, they howled out for more. The letters were swinging, all the drums they were singing. We fought on a corner, then danced through the night. The sound of the Silver Ages choir.
We're going to let a chief steal the show? Hell no.
Bells were ringing out for Christmas Day.
Welcome into episode 16 of Uncaged Sports Talk. I'm Luke Saranka. I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time. I have a very special guest that's going to be joining me today. But before we get into that, I want to bring up that video, those two videos you just saw playing. They were released 2 days ago as a preview to the Jason and Travis Kelce song that just came out yesterday. That is already #1 on iTunes. As you got Taylor Swift fans tuning into it, all football fans tuning into it. Very cool as that came out during Eagles Chiefs week, getting ready for the Eagles Christmas album that's coming out again for part 2 of the Eagles Christmas album. But besides for that, you got the Kelly Oubre situation. I wanted to touch on that before I bring my guest in. Kelly Oubre was hit by a car last Saturday night, or allegedly hit by a car is the word to use for it now. He was allegedly hit by a car, and he was hit by a car, but it's just such a weird situation. He supposedly lied to police. He may have lied to police. I'm not going to say he lied to police because that's wrong to do as journalistic integrity, but they have no video evidence that he was actually hit by the car, which is odd. And then they filed a police report. They checked all the cameras around the street where he said he was hit. My take on it, though, I think he was hit by a car because that would take some balls to lie. That would take a lot to lie to police because that's illegal. I'm pretty sure you can go to jail for that, maybe even, or a huge fine for that. But I'm going to take him on his word that he got hit by a car. But I think he might not know the street because he's newer to Philadelphia. He might have gave the wrong street name, which is why they can't come up with the evidence. If that isn't the case, if he did lie about it, he better fess up real quick because that could become a serious issue. And there's 2 other options I think that could have happened in this situation with Kelly Oubre. I think one, he rides a BMX bike. There was a video of him with a BMX bike limping afterwards. I think walking into his apartment. He might have a clause in his contract that he can't ride the BMX bike. And if he does, he has his contract violated. If that's the case, he may have lied to save himself money. But that just creates a whole bigger issue if that happened. That's inexcusable, lying like that. Just fess up and say you were doing what you weren't supposed to, because there have been cases where clauses like that have been put in contracts. Like Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs, he has a clause put in his contract where he can't go snowboarding. If he does, he could have his contract voided, which he wouldn't have his contract voided. It's Patrick Mahomes, but there's clauses like that put in the contracts, so that's a very real possibility. Another possibility that is a little more out there. There's a possibility he could have been jumped potentially and threatened. I doubt that actually happened, but there's always that possibility, and he doesn't want to fess up to that and say who did it because he could be looked at as a snitch and have people come after him. Who knows? That's the more out there scenario. But I'm going to take him on his word, just like Nick Nurse said, that he got hit by a car and he probably just gave the wrong street name is my guess. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest this week. He's an ESPN announcer. He was on ESPN2 last night. He announces college basketball, college football. He announces college lacrosse, field hockey. He was one of my teachers in college, one of my favorite teachers ever, Mike Corey. Nice to have you on.
What's up, Luke? Thanks so much, man. Good to be with you tonight. How you been?
Good. How about you?
Doing
Uh,
good. Doing good.
do you want to let the audience know about yourself? Give the audience more of a background on where you come from, how you got into what you do now.
Yeah. Just kind of what you were saying there. I'm doing ESPN, college football, basketball, and lacrosse right now. But grew up in Vermont, a small town called Brattleboro. Went to school at UMass, and then was very fortunate right after college to get a job working at the University of Delaware, doing the play-by-play for Delaware football and basketball on the radio on this rock station in Delaware. So that was my first job. It was awesome, and did that for a good 13 years. Did some sales with that as well. We used to sell the advertising for the network for the games. And then I started to do some TV like every year, a couple of games here and there. Kind of got into it a couple of years after I started with the radio, and then it finally turned into some bigger stuff, and got to work on NBC, and was very fortunate to do the Olympics for them as well, and then got on with ESPN. And still work for ESPN and NBC today, and it's been awesome. So nothing to complain about.
You actually have had an interaction with one of my previous guests. Me and him talked about you once on one of the previous episodes. We brought you up, and Mark Farzetta at NBC. He told me like behind the scenes that you and him were at like sitting next to each other at like a Flyers game once or something for NBC.
Yes,
and he said pretty good. His comments were pretty good guy.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Thank you. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I do remember that now that you brought that up. That is a good point, because I remember, I think I don't have a lot of time to go to like other games. I'm always doing games, but I think I remember asking them one time that they were doing like a hockey game, and I was like, hey, maybe I'll get some passes or tickets through them. So I think that's might have been what he was referring to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. It was great. I mean, I do try to make an effort to really get to know as many people as I can on our crews, because we don't always do the same games with the same people, and I like to kind of get to know them. So I know this from our class where we do that. So it's been great. Really, it's about all the people.
You had us put all the notes for contacts in there, like birthdays, family members, and you said the reason that's a good thing to do is if you forget who it is, you can just pull up the name on the phone and be like, oh, that's who that person is. And easily start up a conversation, be like, how's so-and-so? How's your daughter? How's your wife? How's your son? Oh.
You're absolutely right. It's a great point. It's something I wish I was doing a long time ago, but I've been doing it for a long time now. And it really does help, because, and then I group it, you know what I mean? Like there's all these audio engineers that work on our games. There's producers, there's directors, there's analysts. So I have them all like grouped with that tagline. So if I need to look it up, because a lot of times people ask me, they're like, who's that guy that did whatever? And I'm like, I just go right to my phone, I can kind of search and like filter it, and find who we're talking about. So, but yeah, it's been good. It's really helped. And I think it's something, everybody should do no matter what field you're in,
Yeah. One of the classmates that we had last semester, I actually had a note on my phone pop up because of putting all the notes in my phone. It said someone's birthday was yesterday. I'm not going to drop the name, but someone's birthday was October 16th yesterday. And I thought that was really funny that cool. Popped up. Yeah. I was like, that's funny.
Yeah.
You brought up the Delaware job. I wanted you to tell a story. I've been looking forward to you saying the story again. I've told some people how you went about getting the attention of the employers for the Delaware job. Because I thought that was one of the funniest stories you told. You can summarize it a bit.
Yeah.
But that was really funny.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a long story, but I'll try to keep it brief, but it's basically the reason why I'm even, here where I am today. I mean, everybody needs a break. Everybody needs, somebody to take a chance on them. And they did. I mean, they wanted a younger person. There was a rock station. They wanted somebody who could do sales. I used to sell at the radio station at UMass for the student radio, and I did the game. So I set my demo CD at the time, right? I was on a CD, and I just FedEx these packages to like 3 guys, the program director, the regional vice president, and the general manager at the radio station. And then every day I sent like something else, like these little attention getting items, like a bunch of losing lottery tickets and megabucks that said, why take your chances and gamble when you can go for the sure thing? And I put my picture on there, Mike Corey. I sent a clock with my face on it, like Mike Corey's on the ball, it's Mike Corey time. I sent the basketball.
Compass.
Yeah, the compass. I had, like Mike Corey's the way to go. Set the basketball with my name on it, like Mike Corey's on the ball. And I just kept flooding them with stuff every day. I ordered, I called up a Papa John's pizza place or whatever it was in Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them deliver pizzas to the radio station, to all 3 of those guys and the whole staff, and said, enjoy your lunch, Mike Corey. So I just kept kind of selling myself, and that it really stood out, because I didn't have as much experience as other people. And, I sent handwritten letters, and I had FedEx packages, and I tracked this whole thing, So it's kind of neat, because today, what does everybody do? Oh, they send the call, or they make a call, they send an email. It's like, you got to try to find a way to stand out. So I got some good advice on how to do all this, and a little bit of help, but it was a big reason why I got the job.
Yeah, I remember we all found that story very funny. We were all like, yeah, today that would be, you could still do that today, but at the same time, it would be a little iffy now today.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember we all said that.
Yeah, it's like, look, it's not, I know today's a little different, right? But it's not like, we're not stalking anybody. We're not doing anything like that. Like we're trying to stand out, It was kind of neat. Like every day I talked to them, they were wondering. I was like, oh, what am I going to get from him today? It was kind of a cool thing. They started to look forward to it. Like it was like, what's he going to send us this time? So it was just another way to get involved without doing the same old thing like everybody does. So I think a lot of it could still apply today. To be honest with you, for anybody that wants to try to get a job and do stuff like that.
When I was applying for the WIP job, I didn't get it just because I didn't have all the experience they were looking for, as much as experience as they were looking for.
Right.
But I was actually thinking about sending like a pizza and putting like a note on it. Just from what you told us, that was an idea I had, but I didn't have time to do that.
Yeah, but you know what? It works. I mean, we're not trying to buy the thing. It's just another creative way to get involved, because I had to do something, because I didn't have all the experience that everybody else had. So like if you're Bob Costas or whatever, it's like, it speaks for itself. Like, his buddy could just be his agent. Like you don't need anybody, it's like, but like when you don't know who the person is or what the deal is, you really got to find a way to separate yourself.
I had some teachers in college, specifically like the last few semesters, say it's not what you know, it's who you know, with getting in, especially getting into like the sports industry. If you know the right people, it can take you a long way.
Yeah, and listen, I don't disagree with that statement. I mean, you've heard it a lot and stuff like that, but it's not the only thing. But it is important, right? I mean, it's about, and you got to take it a step further and figure out like, well, what do I do for that? You can't just say it's who you know. It's like, oh well, it's Ian Eagle's son Noah, so he got the job just because of his dad. Like, well, you know what? That's a big help, right? Or Jack Collinsworth, because Chris Collinsworth. Listen, I mean, we all understand. I mean, their dads, they're big time announcers, but that's how they got their in. They still got to be good. They still got to work hard. They still got to do a good job. They still got to treat people right. They still got to maintain relationships. They still got to prepare. Like they're doing all those things. They just happen to get vaulted up to the level because of the connection that they had. So, you could burn it though. You could do a terrible job, and then you lose that opportunity. So like, yes, you do need to know people, and you got to do it over time. You can't just be like, oh, I know this guy. Like, look, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 or 4 years. So you're right. If you start to develop some of those relationships and the people that you know, but you do all those other things I'm talking about, then I feel like it kind of puts yourself in a good position to be successful.
Yeah, they're going through like all these lower levels, like this podcast, for example. It's just to get my foot in the door. And if I know the right person, it could vault. This could be the experience that they, like a demo almost.
Yeah.
Show it to the employer, and it just keeps the foot in the door. Like they were probably doing stuff like this. They were probably writing articles.
Correct.
Coming up in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to get into some other topics for our show today. I want to get into Michigan. That's one of the biggest topics in all of college sports right now. What's your take on the Michigan Spygate situation, as we'll call it?
Yeah. It's like there's so much in sports today, right? When you pop open the ESPN app, I always kind of look and I read all the headlines every day. And it's like, really, I would say like 80-90% of them aren't even, anything about like, who won the game last night or anything like that. It's all these other, ancillary situations and things that are happening around these programs and who's getting fired and who's messing up and who's doing all these things. Like, I just don't really get involved with it, to be honest with you, too much because, you don't know the whole story and you don't know all the information, so I find it a little difficult when I see some of our analysts or people that are just, coming right on and being like, this is ridiculous. It's, Harbaugh knows and it's his fault and they should suspend him. They should do all these things. Like, look, man, you really have no idea. Like, I mean, you could speculate, you can make up things. You could say they're cheating, like, but we don't know. And like, we don't really know all the information. So I don't like to kind of jump to conclusions and stuff and let the process go through. Let's just see what happens. I mean, yeah, it doesn't sound great. Obviously you're wondering, well, is this the only guy he was just doing this and nobody else really knew about it? Like, come on. So I don't know. And like, I try to stay away from that stuff because you could just look bad. You come out with these adamant statements and opinions and then you're wrong. And then you just look bad. It's almost like when you watch games, you see this all the time, right? And watch it this weekend, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. NFL games, whatever. The analysts are always trying to guess the penalty. Oh, no, it's definitely a hold. It's a hold. And then they come out and it's something else. Like, look, maybe there was a hold, but they didn't call it. They called something else. So when you jump the gun and you try to guess everything, the only thing you could do and to set yourself up for is be wrong. If you wait, you're always right. You know what I mean? So I try not to like jump the gun.
Yeah. From my take from like the bits and pieces I've heard of it so far, the news that is out, looking at it from both sides, I think the only spot that could have been like wrongdoing, because you're allowed to send scouts to games. All teams send scouts to games. It's just the videoing part. I don't know if Harbaugh had any influence with that. The videoing part is the only reason they messed up with it. Because you're allowed to go look at the signs.
Right.
You're allowed to look at signs on the All-22 film.
Right.
It's just you can't go in there and record like on your phone. You can't record on your phone at the game.
Yeah, and
that's where they went wrong.
No, you called it. I mean, because you're right. You could easily find a couple of different camera angles or whatever on these games and try to see if you can decipher it yourself, after the fact or whatever. So it's not like people don't do that. I mean, believe me, everybody's trying to gain an advantage any way that they can. But yes, I agree with you. I think by doing that, it kind of, set up a flag and it's like, oh, look what we're doing. Even though I'm sure other teams are, it's probably doing something similar, right? You never know. But yeah, it's a tough deal because they're having an awesome season. They're one of the best teams in the country. And now it's just going to be tainted or whatever a little bit. You know what I mean? It's almost like, but come on, let's just
almost like Belichick situation.
I was going to just bring that up. Like, with the Brady, it's like everybody wants to try to find a way to get on top. It's like, it's going to take, a little bit more than a couple of deflated footballs or whatever to like ruin Tom Brady's legacy. I mean, you kidding me? Like it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Okay. Yeah. Maybe that happened one game or whatever. It's like, really? Like, you're going to be like, oh, Tom Brady is going to beat you, whether he's got a football that's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't mean it was right. Whatever. I get it. They screwed that one up. I get it. And the same thing with the Spygate. I don't know. I'm not really, going back to think about that whole thing. But again, if that happens once or twice, I don't know. But you'll win 6 Super Bowls, right? And then you find these ways to be like, oh, look, this is why. Like, not really. Like, they're just trying to find a way to knock them down.
And for the most part, most teams are probably doing bits and pieces of some things. It's just who gets caught, who doesn't, in all aspects of all sports. You saw with the Astros, sign stealing.
I know.
I guarantee other teams have done it. Yankees have been allegedly caught sign stealing once, but
that's why they got the audio thing. It's just crazy, right? I mean, they press the button that goes to the pitchers, in their hat. I mean, would anybody have thought of that years ago? No, it's like
my take with that too is it creates more of a home field advantage in baseball. Because if the
Yeah.
crowd is loud, it's hard to hear that audio.
Right.
It
Like
can get
football,
mess with the
right?
pitcher.
Yeah, like the football, the quarterback,
Yeah,
I can hear. Yeah.
create that aspect more with baseball now that they got that rather than
Yeah.
just signs.
No, I agree
But
with you. Yeah.
just about all teams, even players, are trying to, in all sports, are trying to find an edge one way or another. Well, I hate to say cheating is acceptable, but there is the old saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah.
Because most teams are trying to cheat one way or another. They're trying to find that edge
Right.
one way or another. It's
I know.
just a matter of whether they got caught. And Michigan got caught filming, which is the problem in that situation. I am gonna pivot to one of the biggest topics in all of college football this year. It's died down because of their record. They need to win their final 2 games to get a home playoff game. Or not home playoff game, to get a bowl game. I'm in football mode saying
Yeah.
home playoff game. In NFL mode, Eagles mode. But I want to ask you about your Deion Sanders this year at Colorado. What's your thoughts on him, on that entire team this year? How
Yeah.
they've looked?
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? I mean, listen, for us at like ESPN or anybody that's doing these games, like you love when these things happen like this because you take it and you run with it, and it's big time for ratings and money. Like I'll give you an example. I mean, I believe it was 9.3 million people watching the Colorado State game or whatever, like at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday. Like, you kidding me? Like, that game would have never like less than a million normally or whatever the heck it was. I mean, and it's late night, and it's like, and everybody wants to watch it, and
Went
listen, I'll
until
tell
2
you,
a.m.
yeah, I know. Like, I'll tell you, I kind of like have been, caught up in it a little bit too. I'm like, oh, I got to see what happens to Colorado. Like, are they going to win tonight? Like, I mean, seriously, like, I mean, I know it's prime time. I know he's a big, big name, whatever. I didn't realize how big, I guess, this is until, this is what happened this year. And they got that big first win. That was monstrous because they were like a 3 touchdown underdog. So that was just to spark this whole thing. Like, had they not won that, I don't know if it would have been as big of a deal. But we love it because that's huge ratings. And then all of a sudden those games are on ESPN. Like, we never would have done Colorado, like, and stuff like that. So it's almost like the Taylor Swift and the Kelsey thing, like, we love it. Everybody's like, oh, I'm tired of hearing about Taylor Swift. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, we're getting ratings, we're making money, they're getting sponsors. Like, that's what it's all about. You got to look at the bigger picture. And it's like a Howard Stern thing, right? Remember, everybody, either you hated Howard Stern or you loved Howard Stern, and he got such great ratings because even the people that loved him will listen, and the people that hated him want to listen because they want to hear what he had to say. Like, you just get wrapped up in it. You know what I mean? So we'll take it. I mean, I think good for him, but yeah, they're not. I mean, they came back to reality. I mean, that's for sure. So it'll be interesting to see if they can, they had some injuries and whatnot, but see if they can, get enough wins to get to a bowl game.
Yeah, I remember one of my first episodes on Uncaged Sports Talk. Me and Dan Steenkemer, I think he's one of your students currently.
Yep.
He was on, and we were talking. I even mentioned that was right before college football started. That was heading into week 1 of the college football season. I remember asking him, "Do you think Shador has a chance to be like a Heisman?" And we both were like, "If they pull off this first win, who knows? There's actually a real chance." We didn't think they were actually going to pull off the win,
right?
But we were all both interested. The whole world was interested in Colorado, seeing Shador Sanders, how he would do Deion's son.
Yeah, it's what TV and social media and the power of a major player like Sanders can do when he speaks or he says this or that, and everybody talks about it. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, here you go. Like ESPN is able to really make things big. If they want to make it big, they can make it big. I mean, I remember one time they asked me about something of like, how can we promote this or make this bigger? It's like, what do you mean? You could do whatever you want to do. Like, if you want to put it on ESPN and make it big, you can make it big, and that's what they're doing. So they're pretty smart with their positioning on stuff.
That brings up another topic. It's with a lot of stuff. I got to show this clip once we talk about it to my dad because he hates it. It's more pro wise.
Yeah.
But like the Dallas Cowboys, for example, how all networks just talk about the Dallas Cowboys 24/7. I'm an Eagles fan. I hate the Cowboys.
Right.
But all networks talk about the Cowboys 24/7. And there's one simple reason for it. And I tell him all the time. Because of money. That's the biggest reason they talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Whether you hate them or you love them, they're going to get ratings one way or another. Just for people rooting for them to do bad, wanting to hear bad takes about them, and for people rooting for them to do good, wanting to hear good takes about them.
Agree.
It brings in money.
Yep, like the New York Yankees, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about an unbelievable money franchise. I mean, that's like at the top of the list, in terms of like, But you're right, Cowboys. Yep, Yankees, and I'm sure we can think of others.
I gave a good example with the Cowboys thing with Skip Bayless.
Yeah.
Would you rather, if you were on one of those shows, would you rather talk about the Cleveland Browns and make $1 million, or talk about the Dallas Cowboys that make $5 million?
Right. No,
You're gonna choose the $5 million, no
Yep.
matter who you're gonna choose that $5 million, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, to add to your point, just about being about the money, like, I laugh when people were like, when UCLA, USC, whatever, I'm going to the Big Ten, and it's like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, there are other sports have to like travel across the country. It's like, field hockey's going to go from LA to Rutgers. Like, yes, they are. They don't care. They make another $50 million or whatever it was. I mean, it's like, don't overthink it. I know, I get it. The relationships, the matchups, the things are different. It's about the money. Like, they'll pay them their $10,000 if they have to for a Tuesday game where you got to fly to New Jersey. It doesn't matter because they make so much extra money. So I hate it that, it's happened like that. And the Pac-12 is, dissipated. It's ridiculous, but it's about the money. That's the answer. You don't even have to go any further with the discussion. That's why it happened. Simple.
To bring it back to like Colorado, for example, that game, the Colorado State game, it happened starting at 10. That game should never start at 10 o'clock. That game should be in prime time. Prime time should be coaching in prime time there at that point in the season. That should have been a 7 o'clock game, and it gets even more ratings.
Well, but here's the thing. They know they're going to get ratings on that game because people want to watch it or whatever. So they're not going to blow up a game that would get, really, really big ratings at a 7 o'clock and just replace it. So they're like, well, no, we're going to take our 7 o'clock other matchup, kick some butt, get our big ratings with that one anyway. And then we're going to throw them at 10 o'clock and we're going to get way more because people just want to watch it. They don't care what time. They're going to figure it out. They'll go to it. So it's like, they don't want to burn that slot. I mean, it's brilliant, really, because like, why put them on that when you would still get a great audience at, 10 o'clock with 9.3 million. They know these things. Like, they're like, even if they put it at 7, maybe you would have gotten 11 or whatever million. I don't know, but I'm just saying it's not worth it to lose whatever you were going to get on that other game at 7. And then you just hit the jackpot. Like, your 10 o'clock game would never draw that kind of, ratings power, but because of the Sanders and primetime, it did. So they're psyched. Like, so now they get a full day of it. So that's why they do it like that.
Yeah. It became a primetime game. Any game basically with Deion Sanders, at least earlier in the year, for all intents and purposes, it was prime time.
Yeah.
He lived up to the nickname this year, at least in the first half of the year. I want to know your predictions. You sent me your predictions, and you can give the reasons why and break it down for the listeners at home for the college football playoff and who wins the national championship. Also, for the people watching on YouTube, I just updated the ticker thing. I accidentally had the ticker from last week on. A little hiccup, but I updated the ticker with college games for this week. But I want to know your thoughts on the college football playoff this year. Predictions.
I like Florida State a lot because Mike Norvell coached there. I did a lot of games when he was back at Memphis coaching the Tigers, and just a super Really good guy on and off the field, a people person, great football mind. And I was just hoping that they would like chill down there and give him a little bit of time. I mean, he comes in at COVID and everything. It was a crazy situation. And look, they're right where I, would have thought the way that guy operates and his staff. So good for them. I think I'm just going to go out on a limb. I mean, none of this, I feel like they might get to the title game. Michigan, just because of all the stuff surrounding them, they just got something to prove, and they just want to be like, no, we're going to show everybody that we're the best team. So I feel like they're going to get in there. Washington, I'm going to say, they get Oregon, and they're undefeated, so I feel like they got to get in there. I think Georgia. Here's the thing, right? I laugh when like people are thinking somebody's ahead of Georgia, 1 or 2 or whatever you want to do, and they were dropped down to 2 a couple times this year. It's like, people, they've won 27 games in a row. Okay. Like I looked it back up. They've won 43 of the last 44 games going back to November 21st, 2020. Their only loss is to Alabama and the SEC title game back in 2021.
That's
also,
insane.
mind you, in those other 43 wins, only 6 other teams have come within a touchdown of even potentially knocking them off. So every one of their other wins is by over 7, 10, double digits. It's not even close. Okay. And they've also beaten 16 top 25 teams in those 43 wins. 3 top 25 wins this year. The only other team in the top 6 with 3 top 25 wins is Washington. So to me, you're number 1 until you're not. And they're unbelievable. So I don't care what anybody else's strength of schedule or who you think might be a little better. They've won 43 of their last 44 games in SEC in the highest level. Like, I think they're going to win it all again. I mean, I just do. Like, until somebody else knocks them off at this point, I don't see them slowing down. I don't want to hear anything. I mean, Auburn was the only team that played them within a touchdown this year. It's 27-20. They beat everybody else, 3 ranked teams. If someone knocks them off, you tip your hat. That's the way I look at it.
Speaking of Washington, before we get back to Georgia in a second, I was going to do a top 5 Heisman thing. Do you think Michael Penix is the Heisman Trophy winner so far this year, if they remain undefeated?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I really haven't thought too much about it on that side of things, but he certainly makes an unbelievable case for it, right? I mean, it's been awesome. I mean, you're right. I mean, and because if they go undefeated, right, and who knows if they win the title? I mean, sometimes that's what happens, right? I mean, there's that discussion, right? Is he the best player or is it the best team? It's like best player on the best team. Like, look, I don't know. I mean, it's you can find a lot of different opinions on that. And believe me, it does matter, I think, what the team is doing. Like that's sometimes it's hard to be like, oh yeah, he's just the best player and their team's not really that great or whatever. Like, well, he's one of the best players and he's on one of the best teams. So yeah, he does have a legitimate chance to pull in that hardware.
Yeah, I was just looking up his stats. He has 3,533 yards in only 11 games, or 10 games. That's an astronomical number for only 10 games. That's really good.
Yeah.
And then 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That interception number is a little high, but it's your college player. And then he's 5th in QBR in the nation. I think in total touchdowns, I believe I saw a stat. He's like 1st in total touchdowns in all of college football, which is insane.
Yeah, no, he's phenomenal.
But yeah, he was going to be my number 1 on my list for the Heisman. Back to Georgia, though, for a second, before we pivot to college basketball. The Georgia situation with people wanting to see them lose with not having them won is very similar to like Alabama in previous years.
Yep.
Or the Patriots when they were in previous years. It's like people, when a team's having sustained success, want to see that team knocked off. They want to see that team knocked off one way or another.
Yep.
Like a perfect example is right now, a great comparison in the NFL. The Eagles, 27 straight weeks, 28 now after the bye week, but 28 straight weeks that they have been in first place tied for or in first place in the entire NFL.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
people are looking for a reason for them not to be the like number one team. Like last week, people are putting the Ravens over them.
Right.
The Eagles only had one loss. Ravens had two going into last week.
Right.
People were looking for a reason not to have the Eagles in that top spot. But when you're the best team in the regular season for 27 straight weeks, 28 now, there's something about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you're you're number one, or you're on that top spot until you're not, until you're knocked off. It's not. It shouldn't really be a like a discussion. I'm not saying discussion, but like like, oh, I don't think they're that good. Like, what do you mean? like the what you just brought up does the talking. I mean, they're in first place. They've won all these games. They played for a Super Bowl. I mean, they almost won. I mean, so it's like you don't need to discuss it. Like that's what I'm saying. Like this college football playoff, when they come up with these rankings, it's like, oh, there's big committee and we're sitting in rooms for 18 hours. We're watching all this stuff. It's like, it's not that hard. Georgia's number one. They've won 2 straight national championships. They haven't lost. Like, I don't know where the discussion is, to be honest with you. I mean, the 2, 3, and 4, yeah, sure, fine. We'll figure it out. But when the end of the year comes, it's not that hard to come up with 4 teams. Like, no offense. Like, I just love that we make this huge thing. Like, oh my God, what's it going to be? Like, it all shakes itself out. Ohio State, Michigan, one of them's going to win, one's going to lose. They're going to be out of it. Washington, Oregon, that's going to meet, somebody's going to be out of it. Florida State, okay. Georgia, Alabama meeting the SEC title. Whoever does that, we'll figure that out. I mean, it's like, it makes it easy for you, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know why it's such a, like, we could all come up with the 4 teams, no offense, at the end of the year, to be honest with you. I mean, I just find it comical at times. I can't wait till we expand this thing to the 12, and then there actually is like, oh, okay, these guys got to buy. Oh, let's put these guys against these guys, and let's just see what the heck happens. It'll be way more fun.
I've been wanting to see for years the FCS system with Delaware. You get like top 8 teams get a bye. It's closer to like March Madness style.
Yeah,
you get 23 teams in it. It makes conferences matter again. Because I don't think in the 12th team as much, the conferences are going to matter as much.
Right. Yeah.
If you kept conferences how they were, it would make conferences matter again, because conference champions get automatically in. It would make those lower level conferences matter. They would get an automatic bid in, and then you would have 11 wildcard teams.
Yep.
Which would be a really cool system, but I don't know if that's going to happen now. It might eventually.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, we would all love that. But again, what did we say about earlier? It's about the money.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just tell you something. I mean, you know what? Like, how did the World Series do? Texas and Arizona. Not that great.
Yeah,
not greater ratings, right? I mean, nobody seemed to really care, right? Because it wasn't a big high market team, and nobody Fox doesn't want that. You know what I mean? Like they don't want that because they don't get the ratings. So yes, I mean, years ago, the old BCS and stuff like that, I don't know, UConn got in there or whatever. They didn't bring a lot of fans to the game. I'm just making up an example, not trying to knock on UConn, but if they don't get the ratings, they don't get the money, then Verizon's not giving you $20 million and you didn't hit your number, then, it's like, they don't want that. Like, that's why I think the committee is, for the longest time, is just trying to keep it to these 4 games for these 4 teams, because they know they're going to have major, unbelievable, high-profile teams, and they're going to make money, and they're going to get big ratings, and both semifinals have 25 million people, and the championship will have 25, 30 million, whatever it is. That's why they want that. They unfortunately do not want, I don't think, UCF or TCU or anything like that.
Yeah,
no offense to those teams. And it stinks because I like it. I want to see it. I'm not telling you that's what I don't want. I'm just saying you got to look at it sometimes, unfortunately, from the monetary and the TV and that perspective, because I just gave you the example of the World Series. Didn't work out well for them because nobody cared. Like, they didn't want it,
I remember before the World Series, speaking of that, and with like the Cincinnati TCU stuff the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But before the World Series, I remember thinking the MLB might actually give like the Phillies calls heading into that Game 7 because it's a business. You have Philadelphia in the World Series, the ratings skyrocket compared to Arizona.
No, you're 100% right. I always laugh because my dad's always like, of course it's going to game 7, Mike. It's about the money. I'm like, Dad, I don't think they're losing on purpose just to get to game 7. But
Like-
it's
like the TCU Cincinnati thing the last 2 years. Sure, it's a cool story to people who actually follow the sport. But to the casual fan,
right.
the casual fan wants to see the Georgia-Alabama matchup, if that could happen. This year, they want to see the casual fan wants to see the Georgia-Michigan matchup. You get
Right.
that many more viewers if you have the best two teams in it. It's for the NBA. Andre Iguodala brought up a good point with like how it's always goes back to the money. He was talking. It was on another podcast. Andre Iguodala said before he told Evan Turner before Game 7 that we're gonna have to against the Boston Celtics. We're gonna have to win by 15, just to win by 2, because the NBA wanted a Boston Celtics versus Miami Heat matchup.
Yeah,
it's a business at the end of the day, and they want their ratings one way or another. And it's a business. They're going to try to find a way to get their ratings one way or another.
100%. I mean, what do they want here this year? I probably, like you just said, Georgia, Michigan, right? Just because all the things going around Michigan, all this just Georgia hasn't lost. I mean, that would be crazy. I mean, I think Florida State's great too. That's a huge fan base, so they have no problem with that. Washington, I don't know, Pac-12, but Pac-12 has been awesome. Like I'm entirely disappointed and frustrated what happened with that conference. That's a topic for a whole nother show, but it just, we'll see what happens. We'll see.
Yeah, the one thing that they don't want, I'd put money on this. If this happens, they'd lose a lot of money. Washington versus Florida State, because then you miss out on Michigan and you miss out on Georgia. That would be the national championship they wouldn't want with this Final Four.
Yeah, with this prediction that I got going on, but no, I agree with you.
They want at least Michigan or at least Georgia, because you need one of those two teams to elevate the matchup.
Oh, hey, listen, I mean, I'm not trying to be like I'm 100% running all this stuff. I'm just, I'm a little adamant on certain things because I've seen it for years. And, like, hey, who's 1, who's 4, who's 2, who's 3? Oh, this guy beats him. He beats him. There we go. But just wait. Just wait to the 4. You'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out, like I said.
We're going to pivot to your Final Four predictions now for the year.
Yeah, I don't know about this. I mean, I really didn't have an idea. I mean, this, I'll be honest. I'm not like, this isn't a very a strong pick. I mean, not that the teams aren't strong. I'm just saying, I think UConn's going to be pretty special again. I think Dan Hurley's done a nice job there, and now they're back on the beat. I wasn't expecting them to win it all last year, and they rolled through the thing. So I'm just thinking they'll have a good season. I don't know if they get to the Final Four and get in there. Gonzaga has been knocking at the door for how many years now? Like 10, 15, 20 years. I'm like, nobody expects them this year, because on the times where they did expect them to do it, they didn't do it. So, like, I'm just feeling at some point, they're going to get in there and they might have an opportunity.
At some point.
Yeah. And then I just watched that Kansas-Kentucky game last night, and both teams are awesome. I think maybe Kentucky finally steps it up, this year and competes and really has an opportunity to have a strong season. I mean, I love Coach Calipari. He was, with us at UMass, where I went to school. I've always supported him and what he does, and I think people give him a lot of slack when it's not deserved. But so I think Kentucky might have an opportunity, and then Kansas is always right there. How do you count them out? Just because they win their league, they're going to get a good seed. One thing I got to say, like when you go come the NCAA tournament, I think we talked about this in our class, is that everybody wants to pick all these crazy underdogs and stuff. Yeah, well, we've had those now, especially with the portal, right? And FAU and San Diego State. Like, what do you mean? It's like, I'm not surprised anymore, because they got transfers and people all over the country. So it almost doesn't even matter what the name is on your shirt, or, it's the 12 seed or the 6 seed. You're going to see it again. So that's why I don't really like this, because I think these are going to be high seeds. There are going to be a couple of lower seeds in there. But and I'm going to forget the number, but over the last something like 13, 14, 15 years, 12 number 1 seeds have won it. And the other times when a 1 didn't win it, remember that? It was UConn. UConn had won it as a 6, as a 3, as a 2. Villanova won it once as a 2, So it's like, you can make all the upsets and stuff you want, but when it comes down to it, how hard is it that all 4 number 1 seeds or all 4 number 2 seeds get upset? You know what I'm saying? They're that good at teams. And I'm just going to throw a stupid example, but like say, pretend there's 8 New England Patriot teams with Tom Brady in the as a number 1 and number 2 seed. Are all 8 Tom Brady New England teams going to get upset? Kind of hard to do that.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So that's why I always feel like, a 1 or 2 is going to be there, because that's asking a lot, that everybody has a slip up there. And you're talking the top 8 teams in the nation. It doesn't usually happen.
When I saw this, the one thing that I thought was interesting to Kansas, I would actually like to see them go on it this year. They were my pick last year to win it all, and they were a lot of people's pick. They burned a lot of people last year, but it would almost be like the Virginia situation from a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
They got bounced really early in the tournament and then went on to win a national championship the following year. It would almost be a repeat of that if Kansas could go and do it. And Kansas has more of the pedigree than a Virginia. Kansas has more of a history.
Well, Kentucky lost in that first round, right? A couple of years back. I mean, that was tough too, So I mean, but that Virginia, I mean, you can't go much lower, and then obviously you can't get any higher. I mean, they were the only team at the time to lose as the 16. Terrible. They got blown out. And then they come back, like you said, the next year they win the national championship. I did a game that season with them, actually their first conference game of the year that year against Florida State. It was awesome at Virginia, and they went on to win the title that season. So they'll never forget that. I mean, that's pretty special, that 2-year span right there.
Yeah, that's really cool too. Getting to call like a game for the national champion that year.
Yeah,
really,
I didn't know
really
at the
cool.
time, but they were good.
I'm trying to see, was Kansas upset this year in the first round as well? I'm trying to.
Yeah, I don't remember. That's shame on me. I should know that, but I mean,
they were either in the first or second round, which is why I said it would be very similar.
Right.
I remember they were upset by like one of the like no-name schools that people have never heard of, which if they could go and do it, that would be storybook almost. It would be, like I said, a repeat of the Virginia situation, which would be really cool to see. And they would redeem my bracket from last year, because I'll probably, if they're a top seed, I'm picking them to win again this year, most likely.
Yeah, here I just pulled it up. Let's see. So they were 24-8 last year. Second round, they lost in the second round, and they won the title the year before, obviously. And
they lost to Arkansas this year in the second round.
Yeah. So
and beat Howard in the first round.
I mean, if you ever wanted to mess around, I mean, obviously Kansas's record is ridiculous. I mean, if you look at it, what Bill Self has done, but Gonzaga is the same thing. I mean, and they play big teams now. They play good, really, really good teams. They've been doing it for a long time. Like if you go and look up sometime when you're on your phone or whatever, Mark Few and what he's done at Gonzaga, it's ridiculous. Like, so I kind of cheer for them at some point to cut down the nets, because they deserve it.
Yeah, I remember being 14, just doing brackets, and Gonzaga just being like a 6 seed usually at the time. I remember seeing them a lot in brackets at the time, but they were always just like a lower 6 seed, just conference winner.
Right.
But now they've turned into a powerhouse, because they've gotten repeatedly, and they just haven't gotten over the hump yet.
Yeah.
We're gonna pivot though to my top 5 favorite teachers ever, since Mike Corey was one of my professors at UD. He was my professor my senior year, spring semester. I'm going to go through the top 5 favorite professors ever. Keep this short and sweet. Coming in at number 5 is a teacher I had at UD. His name was Dr. Martin. He was for a political science class or something like that my freshman year. And I also took a class for him my sophomore year. I have him at 5 just because he was very memorable, because of how crazy he was. He was very crazy, but that made him memorable. That made me want to pay attention in this class. And I did well in his classes, got good grades on the papers he had. And he comes in at number 5. At number 4 is a teacher. I mentioned him last week with my friend I had on my podcast last week, Mr. Rogers. I had him in 11th grade, a social studies class. We always just talked sports in that class. That was during the year the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl, which added to it, I guess. But he was that was the year before the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz's rookie year in his class. But we all just talked sports in there. I remember he was a Penguins fan, but he liked all the other Philly teams. We all used to mess with him. And my friend last week, he's a Eagles, Phillies, Flyers, and Cowboys fan.
Oh boy!
So they used to go at each other like being a Cowboys fan with all Philly is worse, but Rogers. And then my friend would be like to Rogers, being a Penguins fan's worse. But they would go back and forth all the time. We would all just talk about sports in that class. Coming in at number 3, 3rd grade year, Miss Vandeman. I don't remember much from the class, but I just remember having her class. She was a Steelers fan. And I used to just be like, Steelers suck. Being an 8-year-old, not really knowing much. And that was also the year the Phillies went on to win the World Series. And I remember me and one of my friends skipped school that day. And we thought we were really cool because we got to my mom let us skip school and took us to the parade for the 08 Phillies, which we thought we were really cool going to that parade, skipping school. Then we went back to school the following week and they were like, we know you guys are at the parade, and we laughed, but because we didn't get in trouble. But that was really cool. She was one of my favorite teachers. Coming in at number 2 is Mr. Napoleon. He was a 5th grade teacher. Not much to say about this guy. He was just a very fun teacher. Everyone wanted him before you went to 5th grade. And me and my friend got him as a teacher, which was really cool. And then I'll have some honorable mentions before I show my number 1. My honorable mentions are some wrestling coaches in high school. Coach Atkinson, nickname was Patty Addy to us wrestlers. Coach Creighton, Coach Davis, Coach Eustace, Coach Jackson. They're all my honorable mentions from when I wrestled in high school at St. George's. And then for number 1, Professor Corey. Mike Corey was my favorite teacher. It was just a really fun class doing the mock broadcast that we did, the mock television show, sideline reporting. It was just a really fun class altogether that I enjoyed.
I appreciate it, Luke. I'm really kind of honored to have you feel that way about me. I love doing it. I mean, listen, all these people. I mean, it's like you're just trying to affect people, and I think we did that not only just like with the sportscasting, but hopefully gave you guys a couple things to think about, in life, just like that's what it's about. It's more than just whatever field we're in, you know what I mean? But I love doing it. I'm thankful to have done it, and this is the 3rd semester now. We're gonna keep it going. But really, thank you for saying that. It means a lot.
I noticed one common theme with a lot of these teachers too. I'm not sure about the 3rd grade one. And Dr. Martin, not as much, but the other teachers I was considering putting on the list lower. A lot of teachers that I liked, there was a lot of group work involved, a lot more just like talking in the class, more interactive rather than just doing the work. And the teachers were more personable. That's why most of these teachers made the list. Just more personable, more memorable overall. When a teacher was more personable, it was a more memorable teacher.
Yeah.
Which is why most of these people made the list. But that'll do it for this episode. It was a very fun episode. I appreciated having you on. I would love to have you on again. I actually want to do an episode with you and Mark Farizetta on at the same time.
Well, yeah.
Which would be really cool.
And we'll get back on.
People coming back together on an episode.
Yeah.
And we could do that maybe around football playoff time. Have you both on together.
Yeah, you let me know, man. It's great talking to you, Luke. I mean, I think it's so much fun getting to know you guys, and like I said, I love teaching. I love getting to meet everybody, and I think what you're doing is awesome, right? I mean, like you talked about, like you doing it for the right reasons. You're gaining experience. You're meeting people. This is what we're talking about: developing contacts, relationships. We're not worried about like, oh, we got 50 million people watching. No, like
I got like
you're gonna
11
get to
people
that point,
watching.
right? Yeah, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that. Like when I used to work at the student radio, or it doesn't matter what game I'm doing or whatever. It's like you put your 100% fullest effort into it, and all that other stuff takes care of itself. You know what I mean? So, but this is awesome. You did a great job. I love all the different graphics and things you have, and but keep it rolling. We'll do it again. I'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
I will say for people who tune in every week with the background, I am planning on getting that changed. As you can see, it's a little glitchy because it's a fake green screen. I'm going to try to get like a full background that's like that, basically, that I can put behind me like a banner type thing, potentially. But that'll be for the future. Still trying to figure that out. Haven't had the time with this job with the hours I work. But it was a fun episode. I look forward to having you on again. And that'll do it for this episode of Uncaged Sports Talk. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe on all of our platforms. It is greatly appreciated.